Have you ever wondered about the origins and activities of Boko Haram? This group, known for its extremist views and violent tactics, was actually not always this way. In the early 2000s, Boko Haram emerged as a religious movement in northeastern Nigeria. Its official name, Jama'atu Ahli Sunnah Lida'awati wal Jihad, translates to people committed to the propagation of the Prophet's teachings and jihad. This name reflects the group's initial intent to peacefully spread the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and their interpretation of Islamic law. However, as the group grew, it evolved and transformed into something far more violent and extreme. Boko Haram began to adopt a more radical ideology, opposing what they perceived as Western influences in Nigeria. This shift led them down a path of violence and insurgency, marking the beginning of a dark chapter in Nigeria's history. Thus, Boko Haram began its journey not as a violent extremist group, but as a religious movement. So what does Boko Haram want, and how do they go about getting it? Boko Haram's main objectives are twofold. First, they seek to establish a strict interpretation of Islamic law or Sharia across Nigeria. They perceive this as a means to restore purity and justice in a society they believe is corrupted by Western influences. Their second objective is to staunchly oppose what they view as the encroachment of these Western influences. This includes Western education, culture, and political structures, which they see as incompatible with their interpretation of Islam. But how does Boko Haram aim to achieve these ends? Their methods are as resolute as their objectives. They employ a range of tactics, from bombings and assassinations to kidnappings. Their targets are often carefully chosen to further their cause. Schools, government institutions, and security forces bear the brunt of their attacks. Schools, in particular, are targeted as they represent the Western education system Boko Haram opposes. By attacking these institutions, they not only instill fear, but also aim to dismantle the structures they believe are corrupting Nigerian society. Their ruthless tactics have made them a feared group not just in Nigeria, but across the world. One of the most infamous acts of Boko Haram was the kidnapping of the Chibok schoolgirls in 2014. This event was a horrifying demonstration of the group's disdain for Western education and its oppressive tactics. Over 200 schoolgirls were taken from their dormitory in the middle of the night, loaded onto trucks, and disappeared into the Sambisa forest. This abduction was not just a local tragedy, but a global shockwave that shook the world's consciousness. The Chibok kidnapping wasn't a random act of violence, but a strategic move by Boko Haram. It served as a chilling message about the group's ideologies and their willingness to use innocent lives to further their cause. The girls were targeted because they represented what Boko Haram detests: education, especially for women. Their abduction was a brutal attempt to instill fear and assert control. The event sparked a global campaign, #BringBackOurGirls, which saw support pouring in from all corners of the world. From ordinary citizens to global celebrities and political leaders, everyone rallied for the girls' safe return. However, the harsh reality is that many of these girls are still missing, and those who returned bear the scars of their ordeal. This incident brought Boko Haram into the global spotlight, sparking international outrage and calls for action. But unfortunately, it also underscored the immense challenges faced by Nigeria and neighboring countries in combating this ruthless militant group. So, what is being done to combat Boko Haram, and what are their current activities? The Nigerian government, along with neighboring countries, has been actively involved in efforts to combat Boko Haram. Military operations have been ongoing, and there is a significant focus on regional cooperation to address the threat. These efforts are essential as Boko Haram continues to carry out bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings, undermining security in the region. In recent years, the group's activities have escalated, with criminal groups known as bandits also contributing to the violence. This has raised concerns about the safety of transportation routes, particularly in the northwest of Nigeria. The government has been criticized for its lack of response to these attacks, leaving many citizens feeling abandoned and fearful. Boko Haram's activities have led to significant humanitarian and security challenges. Many people have been displaced, leading to a humanitarian crisis. The situation is dynamic, and developments continue to occur. Despite these efforts, Boko Haram remains a significant threat. The group continues to seek to overthrow the government and establish a strict interpretation of Islamic law in Nigeria. They oppose what they see as Western influences and continue to target schools, government institutions, and security forces. Despite ongoing efforts, Boko Haram continues to pose a significant threat to the region, leading to a humanitarian crisis. In conclusion, Boko Haram is a complex and violent extremist group with deep roots in Nigeria. Born in the early 2000s, this group has since gained international notoriety for its violent insurgency and attacks on civilians. Driven by a desire to establish a strict interpretation of Islamic law, Boko Haram has targeted schools, government institutions, and security forces with bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings. The infamous 2014 Chibok schoolgirls kidnapping is a chilling testament to their tactics. The fight against Boko Haram continues, with regional cooperation and military operations striving to address this threat. As we continue to monitor their activities, it's important to remember that understanding the origins and goals of such groups is crucial to countering their influence and impact.